One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 1, Episode 1 of the new HBO series Winning Time, The Rise of the Lakers Dynasty, entitled The Swan. Before I get into this, I do want to say up front, I'm not going to say that whole title every time. I'm just going to call it Winning Time from here on out, but that is the full title. The title of this episode is called The Swan, which I think this is a great title because it relates to a scene toward the end of the episode where Jerry Buss, who's played by John C. Reilly, is going to essentially finalize the deal to buy the Lakers with, what's his name? Jack Cook. And he goes and he tells this little story about how he sees these swans and he says, he loves them because they're so graceful above water, but beneath the surface, they're just paddling away. And the camera does a nice little pan where it goes like down from above the water to where you can see the swans to below where you can see their feet. Are they called feet? They're flippers, feverishly paddling. But I like that idea of being cool on the surface, but constantly just kind of like thinking on the fly, having to really hustle and react to everything, and that like panic that you kind of internalize, but you're cool on the outside. I think that relates to kind of like a lot of how the Lakers operate. We look at these guys, particularly the Showtime Lakers, and we might think like, man, these guys are cool as a cucumber, but inside they probably feel that pressure too. And it's the same thing with Buss here in this situation, knowing that he's about to go make an offer to a guy who he knows plans on stiffing him, and he's gonna have to figure out a way to remain cool on the surface, but on the inside, he's paddling away. Like, how am I gonna handle this situation? And he gets into the meeting, and he handles it pretty well, I'll say. So I think that was just a cool title to kind of, I think, not just give us some insight into how Jerry Buss, at least within the world of the show, operates, but what I think, by and large, how people in these sorts of positions operate. Because you can't show that I don't want to call it panic, but like that's kind of what it comes off as in this constant struggle to maintain a calm demeanor outwardly, but inside you're like, okay, I got to do this, I got to do that. What happens if this? What happens if that? That kind of I don't really want to call it panic, but that's the closest word I got to it. But I thought that was a cool title. Moving on to the episode a little bit, but real quick, I want to talk about the preview video that I put out a couple weeks ago. So if you want to have a better idea of who all is involved in the making of this show, down from the writers, the executive producers, the actors in it, all that good stuff, I talk about that in that video. So I'm not going to spend any time in this video talking about, this is who plays this person, and this is who this is, yada, yada, yada. I'm not going to do all that here. If you are interested in that, the people who are behind the making of this show, I didn't talk too much about what the show is about, but if you're interested in that, you can check out the preview video. So this show, I think it's an interesting situation because that Sunday 9 p.m. slot on HBO is a big deal. Like, that's where HBO puts all the shit that they really want eyeballs on. And I always kind of gauge my watching around what HBO has on Sundays at 9. You go from, they would always have something even to kind of like bridge the gap between the big shows. When Euphoria first came out, season 1, Euphoria was kind of like that bridge between, I don't know, we'll just say Game of Thrones and Westworld, something like that. And then Euphoria now became its own kind of staple in that slot as well, which it did great ratings this past season. And now, we transition into Winning Time, and Winning Time will transition into something else. But the point that I want to make is that this is an important time slot. And this is also an interesting subject matter. I don't think that, I'm guessing here, but I feel like a show about the Showtime Lakers isn't necessarily something that HBO thinks will belong in that 9 p.m. time slot. And it made me wonder what kind of show this was gonna be. Like, what not just the story, but how are they going to tell this story? Because this is a story that might not be interesting to a lot of people. It is kind of a niche story. A lot of people might, if you're not into the NBA, you might not be interested in this show. If you're not into 80s NBA, you might not be interested in this show. So how do you get this show to reach the amount of eyeballs that you typically would want or expect out of your HBO Sundays at 9 slot. And I think what this show did was really interesting. It is edited and shot in a way that I think is really interesting. And then I think they exaggerate certain characters in certain ways that I think will help add to the overall appeal of the show. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. I want to start with talking about the episode as a whole. I thought this show was super fun. Like, I really enjoyed this hour of television. And there's something to be said about that, right? You know, I come on here and, you know, for episodes of Succession, I'm talking about this scene, that scene, what it meant, why it was important. You know, all these sorts of things where you just like really kind of deep dive into what's going on and the meaning behind it and explaining to you guys why I think the show is so great. This is one of those ones where it's like, man, you could just sit back for an hour and have a good fucking time, man. And like, I don't have to like dig too deep to find meaning here or feel like I gotta come on here and explain things to you guys. Like, hey, this is what this meant. It's just a good time. And I think they pulled that off perfectly to where this is something where maybe I could get my wife to watch this first episode, which she had no interest in this show because she's not interested in the subject matter. But I mean, there's a lot of shows that people watch that they might not think they're interested in the subject matter, and they watch it and they are. And I think this is one of those shows you could show this to somebody who's not an NBA fan, who's not a Lakers fan, and they can find something enjoyable about it. And I think that's why is the interesting choices they made here. So this first episode revolves around Jerry Buss's attempt to buy the Lakers and I guess the Lakers' reticence, not even the Lakers as a whole, because Jerry Buss wasn't hesitant, but the reticence behind drafting Magic with the first overall pick. They're not very subtle with tying this into racism. You know, we look at the NBA back in like the 60s, and it's very much a white league, and then you look at it right now, and it's very much a black league. And I think the transition that happened around this time, you think, you know, 1979, you got Magic coming in. You've already got Kareem in there doing big things. You're a few years away from your Isaiah Thomases, your Michael Jordans, all those kind of players, right? And it's very clear that they don't pull any punches here. They let you know, very clear fashion. Larry Bird was favorable because he was white, and Magic was not because he was black. And that's how we spend a lot of the episode, is looking at Magic's transition from Lansing to actually being drafted, because this episode ends on that note, and then Jerry Buss's attempt to buy the team. And what made this, even that just doesn't even sound that interesting. Like, oh, the first episode just goes up to the draft, but it's like, it's about the way a show is structured. So let me talk about that. So I think the show is kind of like it feels like a mixture between like The Office and Saved by the Bell, but with like serious subject matter. And the reason I say that is because it kind of has that mockumentary kind of feel from The Office, but it mixes in that Saved by the Bell thing. Like, you know how Zach would like call timeout and he'd be like talking to the audience, or he might talk to the audience while people are still there or whatever. Like, these characters break the fourth wall constantly, but they'll do it like while people are still actively talking to them within the scene. So I think that's pretty cool, and that's fun. And then you also have the way it's filmed, the way it's shot, and the way it's edited, I think are interesting choices as well. For starters, the show feels very much like the late 70s, early 80s. You know, you think about if you watch movies from that time, or if you look at photographs from that time, you got very neutral colors, like lots of browns, lots of yellows, things like that. And that's how this show is filmed. It doesn't look like a present day show that takes place in the 70s. It looks like a show from the 70s. You know, right now we're very big in vibrant colors and contrast and these sharp, clean, minimalistic kind of looks. Something like think of Severance. Like, that's the kind of stuff we're accustomed to seeing right now. And here in 2022, we're getting something that looks like it's from the 70s. And I think that's actually pretty cool. I'm enjoying that. They use multiple types of, I'm not well versed enough on the types of cameras that are used and whatnot, but you can tell they got one that feels almost like a handheld video camera, like a consumer buying camera, like one that you might have bought in 1979 that could film video. One like that. They have your standard kind of filming camera, and it's grainy at times. It feels kind of handheld, like it's a little shaky. They do a lot of interesting shots with like really close-ups, real close-up shots that I think are meant to help you understand and put you a little bit more feeling like you're in the room. So to give you an example, in the opening scene when Magic is presumably hearing about his HIV diagnosis, there's a real tight shot on his hands. And that subtle kind of like hand wringing that he's doing is, again, an indicator. Like, they want you to see, like, look at his hands. This is a nervous man who, again, like the Swan, is playing it cool on the surface, but that shot of his hands lets you know that internally that motherfucker's paddling. And I think that, that's the kind of stuff that I pick up on that I think is pretty cool that this show is doing. So let's see. Humor is another thing they use here. And they use it, I think, in a good way because it's not too much. It doesn't feel like a comedy or anything like that. But again, when I talk about pulling in eyeballs that might not otherwise be interested in a show about the 80s Lakers, when you bring in that humor and somebody like John C. Reilly to play Jerry Buss, that's something that can, again, make this show more accepted by eyeballs outside of the NBA community. And they do something that I wonder if this is what's actually happening, because this is what I'm assuming. I read before the show came out that a lot of these facts are kind of like exaggerated. Like, it's loosely based on this book called Showtime, but I think it's called Showtime. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Or it might just be called Winning Time. I don't know. What the fuck? It's a fucking book, man. I haven't read it, but I might actually one day. But it's based on this book. But they said that the show exaggerates some things, just for effect. It's not like a documentary, or even a dramatized documentary. It's playing a little bit fast and loose with the reality. And I'm wondering if the way they use the humor is one of the exaggerated things. So I'll give you an example. One of the funniest thing about this first episode to me, and I think this is something that will continue to be funny throughout the entire season, is how over-the-top angry Jerry West is all the time. And that's something that I wonder, like, is that true? Like, was Jerry West just like a perpetually pissed off guy who is just ridiculously angry all the time? And as someone with his own anger issues, I can find added humor, even more so than I think that they even intend, in seeing somebody be over the top angry, because that's like how I be feeling all the time. But I'm internally paddling like a swan with my anger, but I can't show it outwardly, and Jerry West does. And what they do in this episode that I thought was really, really smart, because even though I knew it was going to happen, they set it up, they did it, and it still paid off, even though I knew it was going to happen, which is throughout the episode, they play up Jerry West resenting the NBA Finals MVP that he won on a losing team. I believe that's still the only time that someone from the losing team has won the Finals MVP. And throughout the whole episode, they let you know he does not like that he kept losing in the finals to the Celtics, and that he was even given an award for losing in the finals to the Celtics. And they also play up his anger. Another thing they do, and again, when I say they're not so subtle with the racism, both Cook and West show moments of either thinly veiled or not at all veiled racism toward Magic. So at the end of the episode, when the Lakers draft Magic, you see Jerry West on stage looking a little awkward, and then he walks off and he goes into his office and he closed the door, and the camera stays outside of the office, which has pretty big windows. And I said, that MVP trophy is about to fly through that window, and sure enough, there it goes. And like, even though I knew it was coming, I still thought it was funny, and I could still appreciate how they set that up with the constant talking about the trophy and Jerry's anger problems. It's a mile away, you see that coming, but it was still funny. I hope that whoever wrote that is okay with it being super obvious that was going to happen, and like they knew like this should still pay off, even though if you've been paying attention, you know this is coming. But I thought that was pretty fun. And then Another thing they're doing, I don't know if this is something that's going to persist throughout the season like I expect the Jerry West thing to, but Kareem telling people to fuck off. I don't know if that doesn't strike me as something Kareem would say. But again, I don't know the guy. I just know him for what I've seen in basketball and various other places I've seen him in media or whatnot. So I don't know if that's something he does, but the Kareem that I think he is would not do that. So seeing him do that makes it funny, if that makes sense. So another thing I dig about the show is the humor. None of the actors look like the actual people, and I just want to put that out there. I don't know if the casting directors think that they do, but none of these actors look like the actual people, and for me that almost kind of adds to the humor. It's a weird thing. I'm watching the trailer for like the rest of the season on Winning Time, and fucking what's Adrian Brody is Pat Riley. Like, he doesn't look anything like Pat Riley at all. But I don't know. That's what they're doing apparently. But one thing I can say, the guy who plays Kareem is close to looking like him, but man, does he sound like him. I don't know if that's that guy's regular voice or if he changes his voice to sound like Kareem for this show, but man, he sounds like him. I will give you, like, you close your eyes, you might think, like, I don't know, that might be Kareem, that might be the actor. I don't know, but good stuff there. 16 minutes. Last thing I want to talk about, the theme song. I really like the theme song here. It's a song called My Favorite Mutiny by a group called The Coup. The portion that you hear during the theme song is rapped by Black Thought of The Roots. So that's pretty cool to, open up something like this with some good music and get into just having a good time with some wild editing. I didn't even talk about the editing. They do this a lot too, which again, I kind of feel like it's something that I shouldn't like, but I do. And I feel like there's a lot of things like that on this show. Like, I feel like normally the actors not looking like the people would bother me. These editing choices, I feel like this would bother me. But like all of these things I find just kind of fun. But they do some weird edits. Like there's one where like Magic is coming down the stairs and then it just smash cuts into him already in the kitchen. Like a little weird thing like that. But one thing that they do a lot is they'll have characters talking. I don't know. There's got to be a word for it. But like they'll have a character is talking, and then they'll like the visuals will cut to them not talking, but you still hear their voiceover. And then it'll go back to them still talking to that person. And I don't know why they do that. Like they'll mix the audio with the visual to where it doesn't match. They do that several times throughout this episode. I wonder what the decision is for that. I don't mind it. I feel like I should mind it, but I don't. There's a scene where after Jerry Buss convinces his ex-wife to loan him some of the money he's going to need to buy the team, he's celebrating, and they do it like 3 or 4 times during his celebratory monologue. And I don't know. I would think I wouldn't like that, but I don't know. I found it fun. So that's generally how I feel about this show. I thought this first episode was really fun, really entertaining. I can't wait to watch the other 9 episodes. I think this is going to be a really fun show. I have no issues so far with any of these creative choices that they made. I think they're all pretty cool. And then I think like I said, they do cool stuff. Like I love the Swan thing. I've referenced it like multiple times in this video already. And I really loved what they did with the foreshadowing of Jerry West throwing that trophy through the window. So, lots of cool stuff happening here. I'm interested to see Magic's progress. I'm hoping that since the Showtime Lakers essentially ended with the Detroit Pistons, that they kind of maybe cast Isaiah Thomas to put in here. That'd be pretty cool. I would love to see some Pistons pop up, but if that happens, that won't be till the end of the series anyway. But yeah, I'll be covering this one every week, so I'll see you guys next Monday for episode 2. Peace.